Shows up.
Our final speaker this morning is close to completing his third path in Pathways, engaging humor. Although he claims to be an expert on his topic, he does not have any affiliation with law enforcement, nor does he have a law degree. This is not legal advice, and he hopes you never have to use this non-legal advice. With his speech titled, "Take My Advice," please humor him with your generous applause as he approaches the lectern. Distinguished Toastmaster Carmelo Belardo III.
Are we ready to have some fun this morning? Yes. Great. How many people in this room enjoy a cocktail or a glass of wine or a beer when you go out? Come on, you can admit it, it's okay. Just one to start with. How many people drive home after this consuming? How many people go out, have a drink or two or three, and then get in your car and drive home?
Used to all.
You don't need to raise your hand, but that's good. Thank you very much for your participation. I'm not going to ask anybody in this room if you've gotten a DUI in the past. I've not. Thank you, God. But today, I'm going to share some not so legal advice. Again, it's not legal advice. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a law enforcement officer. However, if you do have an encounter with Mr. or Mrs. Law, or Ms. Law if she's not married or divorced, take this advice, or don't. Please do. Now, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, as it stated in my introduction, I am not an attorney. I am not a member of law enforcement. However, I am an expert. I am an expert because I've done 42 Google searches, and everything on Google is true. And I've watched 97 YouTube videos on this topic. Now, one caveat. Many of those videos were from Michigan, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Colorado, North Carolina, so not all the advice I'm going to give you applies in the state of Florida, so be aware of that, okay? That was supposed to get a laugh. I should have called Roy. I should have called Roy. Now, the technical stuff. Supposed to drink 1 drink per hour so your body can consume and process the alcohol, but if you weigh 80 pounds, 90 pounds, that may not apply. There's something called BAC, blood alcohol content. It's way too technical. I'm not going to get into it. However, if you do get pulled over by Mr. or Miss Law, and they ask you if you've had anything to drink, and they say, well, I smell alcohol, so I'm going to ask you to step out of the car, would you be willing to accept and do some field sobriety tests?
Sure,
here comes the advice. Now, before I give you the advice, there are 3 tests, basic tests, that they do in the field. One has to do with the eye, where the police officer will ask you to follow their pen. Now, there is a technical name to this test which escapes me.
Test. Don't you know anything about it?
Eye tracking test. Isn't it called like horizontal gaze?
Yeah, it's where the cop holds his pen up and asks you to track. I got pulled over once on my band's last gig, and with a buddy who starts to run into the bushes and get sick, and the blue lights come on behind us. The cop comes up, and same deal, and he's like, follow the pen. So I start following the pen.
Would you like to finish the speech, Carson?
You got a minute left.
I got a minute left.
I'll let you finish it, but I'm getting the pathways correct. Thank you, Carson. Anyhow, I used to be an optician. And if you are asked to follow someone's pen, what they're looking for are certain things in the movement of your eyes, which every person in this room, even sober, would fail that test. The second test is the walk test, the heel to toe test. Watch the lectern for me, please. This is when you're asked to do this while you're counting. Now, if I ask some volunteers, plus you have to turn around, and you have to turn around in a specific way. If I ask some volunteers to do this now, probably half the room couldn't do what I just did, and count. Right?
Maybe.
Roy, could you do what I just did? I would have asked Roy to volunteer, but I only have 7 minutes for this speech.
I can do it when I got a DIU.
All right, pipe down. Now, the third test is the raise 1 foot off the ground, 6 inches high, which leaves, you're standing on how many feet?
1.
Here's the hint, 1. That's like this. Folks at the head table, can you see me? Can you see my other leg? No, I'm not drunk. I haven't had a drink since last night.
You did that shot this morning.
I would fail this test. Here's my other foot. 95% of you would fail that test. Again, Roy, could you do what I just did?
Only if I was drunk.
See, I should have gotten more advice from Roy on this speech. Now, if you have a knee replacement or a hip replacement or both knees, could you do that test? Maybe. Most likely you couldn't. So in this situation, it's a lose-lose for you. You will get charged with DUI. You will get arrested. Now, what happens when you get arrested? They ask you to blow into this device. It's a breathalyzer. Nucitelli told me a story once when he got pulled over. Police officer asked him, "You been drinking tonight?" He says, "Oh, yeah, all night." He says, "What'd you have to drink?" "Oh, I drink Coke." So the cop thought he was a wise guy. He tried to ask him to do these field sobriety tests. He said no. He said, "You know what? I want to do the breathalyzer. I never did that before. Get the breathalyzer over here." Police officer eventually sent him on his way. What's the point? You're going to blow into this thing, no matter what the score is. Even if it's a 0.0, chances are you're going to get handcuffs placed on you. This is based on my research. Again, this is not legal advice. Remember that. What happens if you get handcuffs put on you? After you refuse to take these tests, because my advice, or non-advice to you, is not to take these tests, to say no. Now, we've all seen videos of people being smart Alex with the police officers. They know their rights. I know the law, statute 315.2, section C. Don't do that. Comply with the officer's requests. However, what happens if you say no to these tests? You will get a mandatory license suspension for 1 year, maybe 6 months if it's your first offense. Now again, this may not apply in Florida, so pay attention to that, okay? So what do you do with no license? Uber, got to take rides. Ask Carson to drive from Christmas to take you to the store. No, you hire a competent attorney. Because at this point, the police officers have very little evidence on you because you haven't given them anything. And more than likely, the attorney can overturn that charge, get the charge released, and get your license back. So my advice to you, say no to the field sobriety tests. I'm out of time. Thank you for your time, Mr. Toastmaster.